Hello, welcome everybody to the cert-manager bi-weekly, 30th November 2023. It is just after 5 o'clock London time. We have a couple of things on the agenda today. I will share my screen or a window, and we will kick off with the first item on the agenda. Also, it's very nice to see everyone here today. Welcome to some of the newer faces that I think I seen maybe last week. Not last week, last time. But yeah, Ash, you're first up on the agenda. Do you want to take it away?
I'd love to take it away, yeah. So we actually kind of discussed this a bit in our open source stand-up on European time this morning. So cert-manager is currently undergoing a security audit, which is paid for by the CNCF, and that is a requirement for us to get to graduating. I think this is the first bi-weekly meeting since we've raised the proposal for us to graduate. So I'll announce that now. We've officially proposed that we should graduate, and that's cool. But this is something that came out of the security audit, and it's worth discussing. So there is no big security issue here. It's not a scary thing. It's just a decision for us to make, mainly around compatibility. So we use this library Go PKCS 12, which has a deprecated encode function. And what that encode function used to do before it was upgraded, before it was deprecated, rather, was use legacy encoding, it would call itself, and that uses RC2, which I think if you scroll down, Peter, there's a comment talking about this. That's me, yeah. So yeah, there is a direct equivalent to the deprecated function, which is to continue to use legacy RC2. That's what we've done already. That's merged. The issue is in the docs for this dependency of ours, the Go PKCS 12 dependency, it says that OpenSSL3 cannot decode RC2 anymore. It certainly used to be able to, but in OpenSSL3 they removed it, which is probably on their part for security reasons, because RC2 is not worth anything. But none of this is security related anyway. There is no value to this password. Nobody actually uses this as a meaningful password, and even if they do, they're probably doing it wrong. So security is not the concern here. The concern is that they changed the default here to use DES because it's more compatible. And it's still insecure, but it is more widely readable than RC2 at this point, by the sounds of it, or at least if it's not currently more widely readable, it will be as OpenSSL3 picks up adoption. A lot of people still haven't upgraded to that yet. That means, to shorten all of that, cert-manager is currently creating trust stores that use RC2. That will become harder to read and harder to use over time, but that is the behavior, and it's possible that some things that are consuming those cannot do any other format. We don't know, but it's possible. So changing it would be a breaking change. On the flip side, more and more things will use DES, and as time goes on, that seems a reasonable default for us to have. Because this isn't security related, that aspect of it is kind of taken away. But what we need to decide is how we handle this transition, or if we handle this transition. So we could just say everyone gets DES and you don't get to complain about it. I'm not particularly in love with that suggestion because it screws people over. The alternative to that is that we make this configurable. Maybe that's just the only option we have. I don't know. Essentially, what I'm saying is, does anyone have thoughts about this? What approach should we take? How should we handle this migration? It seems like an obvious thing for us to discuss in this meeting, so that's why I'm raising it.
Just a question, when you said it's a breaking change, how so you're saying like you're sure that it won't automatically pick up the right algorithm? It's not encoded anywhere in the metadata or anything like that?
So it is all encoded like that. The problem would be if someone has some legacy application that's consuming this that supports RC2 but doesn't support DES.
Okay.
Like, but I suspect that the number of people that have that configuration running is probably 0, and if it's not 0, they probably know that their life sucks and they're happy to stay on old versions of things. But I can't prove that nobody will be affected by what is actually a breaking change.
Before we continue, one thing I would like to clarify is what came out of this security audit was not related to this, was just that we were using a function that was deprecated. So we fixed that basically. So the security audit problem is solved. This is just something we became aware of because we made a change in that space.
That's really good to highlight. Like I say, none of this relates to security in any way. Like these, even if you're using a secure password with any of this stuff, it's still not security related. Like eventually there will be a blog post explaining why, or FAQ answer explaining why, but this is not relevant to security. It's entirely compatibility. Erik?
I would just like to say that my opinion is probably that we should seek for the most compatibility as possible, even if this could break for some users. So I kind of agree what you said last, Ashley, and I think it's more important to be compatible with newer things instead of supporting things that probably is just a theoretical problem. We'll see if we do this, but I have the same feeling as you have, that probably a very, very little amount of users will be affected by this, if any.
Yeah, like I say, it's frustrating because I can't prove it, but I suspect nobody would even notice if we change the default. I think part of what's like, there is a part of me that's like thinking we bring this up in this meeting, we discuss it, and then we end up adding an option to configure this anyway because that's the only way to be fairly confident that we won't break loads of people.
But we actually have two options if we go that route, because we could change the default to something else, and then allowing that for users that this breaks for to turn the switch the other way around, or we could leave the default as it is now and with the switch to turn it on. I would prefer to change the default, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if OpenSSL as the biggest library in this space dropped support for RC2, there is no real reason that we should be worried about dropping that. I think it was Tim, maybe it was you that made a good point earlier today. If it wasn't you, I'll redirect credit, but essentially saying that some organizations will audit any use of outdated encryption algorithms, even if they're not being used for actual security purposes. And so giving people the option might be nice, because then they can choose to use AES and pass the audit that they have. I can't remember who said it, but someone said that.
Yeah, it was me.
But I confirm as well that is the case, that I actually had this exact same issue. I had to explain to them it's not for security, but they're like, oh, can we make it loads from a different place that's more secure? Can we make it use AES? Yeah, so I had this exact, it's not a theoretical, but that's about, that's about to get it to AES, not about the, in general, when I kind of lost my train of thought on that. Okay, maybe I'll come back.
I mean, that's really useful to hear, because that, like, in this document I mentioned at the bottom bullet point, we could add this modern 2023 profile that the library has that uses AES. So it would just kind of solve the problem for people who are box ticking.
Oh yeah. Oh, but on the flip side, I was thinking, oh, there you go. It came back to me. This whole thing about being able to get these different formats is behind the was it output formats gate or something like that, right? So it's not actually, anything formally we have to. Like, it's still in that phase where you can change it, maybe? I don't know. As long as you don't massively break people in obvious ways, obviously. But,
I think this is, so we have two ways of specifying different output formats. There's the key stores and the additional output formats, and this falls under key stores. So this
okay. Fair enough.
Again, let it be on the record that I hate that we have two ways of specifying different output formats, but it is the reality that we have. Yeah, I think security is no, compatibility is a concern because this is V1. I think I don't really know how much discussion there will be on this, but my instinct, and maybe if I just say it out loud, it's a starting point, is maybe we just add this as an option. We just do the thing that helps people the most, and maybe we just slap good first issue on it and hope someone comes along. It seems like a good first issue for people.
How would you make it configurable on the, like, with a flag to the controller?
It would have to be on the CRD, I think. Like,
yeah, I actually marked an issue as good first issue that ended up being in the API, and we've been taking several rounds. I have to be patient on that one.
yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a good first issue for anyone that's any experience with writing Kubernetes controllers.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not for like anyone. You have to have some experience, at least how these things work.
I guess I could be clear about that in the description, but that is that just the way to do it? Is all of what I've said pointless, and we just say let's just add the thing? At the very least, it makes the person that Sam was working with happy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say it's a hard dependency because I've been able to dodge that point with the customer. But if it was a default that, you know, it is a new field and it's defaulted to DES and you could set it to AES, it would be nice. But I'm not saying it's a requirement. I don't know.
We're all about doing nice things here at the cert-manager project.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject, I would like to kind of at least see what you think about. We are about to add a new feature in Trust Manager to configure the password, but we have been, at least I've been very clear about that we don't want to be able to put this password in a secret. Is this using the more secure encryption algorithm? Would that justify to implement a feature where a user could put that trust bundle password in a secret?
In my mind, it doesn't justify it because I think the people that actually would configure that in a secure way are going to be approximately zero, in that they need that the secret that contains that password needs to not be readable by anyone. It needs to be mounted like carefully, and it needs to be generated carefully. Like it's not actually a password we want, it's like a secret key.
No, but it's not different than from when you use a key store. It's the same thing there. You will have to have the key to your key store available in the same manner. So there's really no difference there. The difference is that in a trust bundle, the password is to protect the integrity and not that there is something secret inside. And I've been discussing this with a lot of people, not only in this community, but at my job as well, with some of the Linux admins as well. So, I mean, this is not clear how you should do it. And if you have to use these trust or key stores, there is no page you can refer to and say, this is how it is. It's not something you should be worried about, this password.
I should write that page. At some point I will. Maybe it'll be my Christmas present for cert-manager. But yeah, like I don't really buy that this relates to integrity either. I don't think that password is the way that you enforce integrity of a file if that's something that you want to do anyway. My preferred approach would be we implement in cert-manager what you're working on in Trust Manager, where it is you can specify the password in plain text in the CRD, because it's not actually a password, it's just a weird string that needs to exist.
I'm glad to hear that, because then at least we know that we are trying to do something right here, and We cannot change it in cert-manager, but theoretically we do that in version 2.
We could give people the option in cert-manager. Like at the moment we have a secret ref, and we could add like a plain text password field next to it that people could fill in, and if they use that, we'll just use that.
Because this was creating a lot of trouble for us initially when we. The reason we started using cert-manager is that we want to issue certificates to users in our cluster, and we do that through an operator that we have built and maintain ourselves. And for this reason, we had to grant this thing RBAC to secrets, which is not something that we wanted to do, but we had to do that in order to provide our users with JKS and PKCS 12 stores.
Yeah, there's a lot of harm done by the fact that this is called a password.
Yeah,
It
there's
makes
also a
people
bug, that a
confused.
long-standing bug, that if you update the password, your key store and trust store is not updated, which is also very annoying.
Yeah, plain text one would obviously force a reconcile, which would be nice. Like it's. I don't imagine that should be that hard to do either. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm sure we must have an issue for it. But that should probably be marked as a good first issue if we're going to mark the thing we've been talking about as good.
Yeah.
I think in any case, my action for this is to create an issue for adding the fields to the CID, and then we just it's not urgent priority, but maybe it's something that someone can do as a good first issue to get onboarded or whatever, or maybe someone just picks it off in the spare time. I'll take that away.
I do agree also with not using passwords for integrity. I think technically it could be used. It's almost like a symmetric key, basically, they use for integrity checking. But I don't know. I think it's very confusing because it's password and it's not really creating a signature. It's actually creating an encrypted key store. So it's confusing to me.
It almost smells a bit like doing HMAC.
Yeah.
On a trust store and using that as an integrity check.
Except that the HMAC is not the hash of the store; it's the full store.
It will be hashed and then encrypted, probably. But implementation detail that nobody is checking here.
Yeah, well, I definitely think there are better ways to do this, other ways. And the password was definitely not the first reason to create a password. I think the reason there is a password is because it can be used to store private key material too. Is that correct?
Yeah, I take back what I just said as well. I don't think it necessarily will be hashed. I think it's just a really inefficient HMAC that doesn't involve a hash. I take it back. But yeah, the original justification was that people would have private keys in there, and the cert-manager issued ones will have private keys in, but the password still isn't valuable.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is that okay for you, Erik, not to use the passwords for integrity?
Well, just to be clear, I think this password is just a joke. I'm just faced with a lot of questions internally from our users and from our admins. So just to be clear about that, I would be fine having a hard-coded password.
So you actually set it to a value instead of just change it, or an empty string?
Yeah, change it actually causes more confusion, although we understand why it's like that, but yeah.
Change it as the default, I think. Often it's hard-coded to change it.
As a compromise in our operator is that we allow our operator only to create secrets. So we generate a random password and then we try to create it. If it exists, then it fails, but we ignore it, and if not, it's created, and then we use that reference when creating the certificate. So that's how we kind of compromised with our users, because they were complaining, oh, I have to set the password and so on. So yeah.
But if you set it to something that looks secure, people might think it's secure. You have to set it to change it so it's clear that it's not secure.
Well, you can say whatever, and they will still think it's about security. So it doesn't matter what you say.
And like I said, I need to write that document that says why we have the decisions here. I'm going to check out a branch on the cert-manager website, and maybe that'll provoke me to actually use the branch.
I'm voting for a new default password. It's intentionally not secure. That's the password.
I think change it is really it's funny with the Java key store default.
Right, Peter. I think it's time for the next subject.
Yeah. Thank you. I tried to make some notes there. I'm not sure I quite followed, but the outcome there, Ash, was that you're going to add an issue so that cert-manager has the option to choose which, I don't know what to call it, format, algorithm?
Yeah.
Something. Cool. Right, I've added the action. Next topic. Erik, over to you for Trust Manager Part 2.
Yeah, it's actually your issue, the first one.
Had a bad feeling about that.
Yeah. It's just something that was brought to my mind that, I mean, Trust Manager is maturing. It now has a lot of features added lately. But now the question is, how do we expect our users to use Trust Manager? We should at least provide some guidelines to how to use it. But I actually think we could provide some usability features as well. So this point was more added to the agenda after today's stand-up where I mentioned it. So it's not like it's something urgent for me, but in our setup, it would probably be nice to have something like this issue in place. The question is whether it's how it should work, since at least if you want to replace the system trust bundle, you have to do it differently depending on what image the application runs. But just providing a mutating webhook for pods could be possible, and that could solve some use cases for some images like this release. Ashley?
Yeah, I think I have two initial reactions. One is that it scares me for us to provide a mutating webhook in Trust Manager core, because then the uptime of Trust Manager is like, we have to keep it running, and it scares me. Like I instinctively want it to be a separate component installed separately, but that's kind of moot compared to the second, which is that I'm kind of low-key hoping that Trust anchor sets, the upstream implementation of this, should just solve the problem. Because then if we have a specialized type to hold this stuff, that gives people all the incentive in the world to write integrations with that against pods. So like, like they could solve the problem of like the different location between Debian and Red Hat. Right, it could just happen there. So I'm almost like it'll be ages before that's widely available to everyone. So we could do stuff before then to like speed the transition process almost. But that's kind of my hope, is that long term that will be the play, and then when Trust Manager grows support for generating these anchor maps or bundles or whatever they're called today, like that'll just solve it, because then you can use that thing to mount it wherever it's meant to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah. At least your first point about mutating webhook for pods, which scares me a lot too. Tim?
Yeah, I think the trust anchor sets, I don't think it's like a magic solution that will solve this. I think they will just like create this projected volume for trust anchors, and you still have to mount it in a place where your application is using it. So as far as I understand, it will be identical to just mounting a config map. It will just be a separate type.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not saying that I think out of the door it will solve the problem.
Okay.
But I think by having the special type, it may encourage some open source project to pop up that says that, like, we'll try and solve this problem once and for all, and then that wouldn't have to be this open source project, you know. Like someone else might solve the problem using it, and that's the impetus for them to start.
Someone else should fix our problems.
Well, this is everyone's problem. It's just waiting to be fixed.
I wonder what the best kind of approach is. Like, would you start, I don't know, kind of providing building blocks for people to build their images, that kind of stuff? Or like libraries, Go libraries, Java libraries, Python, all those different languages.
In what context? Sorry.
So it's like easier to load these trust bundles, and maybe there's some kind of runtime check and some kind of fixed location where every program loads their trust bundles from.
The problem that I've encountered with that, I've tried to help in this space before, is that you end up forcing everyone to run all the containers as root, because usually when the base image was built, the trust bundle was added and it was owned by root. So you either have to start from scratch and not have it there in the first place, or you end up in a place where you have multiple bundles, or you have to be root to overwrite the ones that exist, and people won't do that. Like we couldn't tell people to run all the containers as root just to solve that problem. Like that's, you can work around it, but like that's a huge problem that you encounter.
I think you will get more like a cloud native base images like distroless, and now you have the chain guard images, which is similar. And there you can, if you just mount it in the correct place, this will kind of replace your system bundle. I think that's the direction it's going to go.
Yeah, my efforts were mainly centered around using existing like distroless and things like that, which it just doesn't work with. But if everyone's willing to change their images, then yeah, we can solve this easily.
But then the thing running in the image still has to use those trust bundles, right?
Yeah, but they all work somehow today, right? So as long as you pick a base, like I guess the idea would be if you pick a chain guard image that corresponds to the OS that you're currently running, then the place where your application is currently looking will somewhere have a certificate in it. Like Go has a list of places it will look. There's environment variables for other things and all kinds of stuff. Somehow they're finding it today.
But they might base it on like another location where the same Mozilla images are the same Mozilla CAs are stored, basically.
Yeah, I mean that's the concern. You don't want two because you don't want it to disagree. I imagine the chain guide images work around that, but I've not used them personally, so I couldn't comment on those. Peter's pointing to his very helpful idea.
Well, I heard some of the things that I think I thought initially as well. So the root mounting thing, I think with Kubernetes isn't a problem. It is a problem with Docker. That's where I initially tried things, thinking containers run the same everywhere. Containers don't run the same everywhere, apparently. But yes, so I explored some of the options in this article around, you could mount it to a different place, or you could mount it over the top of the right place, which I guess is what we're seeing here. Like, what is the right place? Changes for every OS, every sort of language and that sort of thing. So that's what makes it complicated, is the fact there's a lot of options here to do. But maybe just to bring it back slightly to Erik's point, I guess would I be right to say the main thought is great, we have Trust Manager sending stuff around the cluster. How do we make it easy and useful to use it? It's like that's the ultimate goal. Which one case is obviously the trust store for the application, just replacing what it already has. But in other use cases might be replacing trust store references in resources, like CA bundle ref, or no, CA bundle ref is probably all right, but CA bundle embedded in a resource, or base64 encoded.
That was an issue raised by one of the controller runtime maintainers, wasn't it? I think so.
I don't know. You might have a handy link to confirm.
I'll try to find it because that's one of the oldest, I think, by Stefan Boehringer. I'll try to find it.
The other thing that you prompted me there is that I did write that a little while ago, that tutorial, so maybe I need to just revise it for the current version, just in case any things have changed that make it look a little bit different. So I'll add an action to at least go through and do that, because that seems like a good idea, just to make sure.
I found it.
Maybe we need some. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I found it. It's this issue here. It's about injecting trust bonds into CRDs. Was the topic there? I think he was rooted to Trust Manager. He was raising this issue in cert-manager first, to asking if we could send a CI injector. I don't know if anyone you were present in this development meeting where this was discussed.
If I was present, I don't remember.
Yeah.
So is it in the CRD or is it in the custom resource that you want to inject CA bundles?
They want to inject it in custom resources defined by a custom resource definition.
Yeah, okay.
So he's actually a maintainer both in controller runtime and in copy. So he's quite active in the community. I think they found another workaround for this problem. I tried to look at the PRs that were coming right after, so it seems like they have found a workaround. But I don't think this is a bad idea to at least consider, but it might be a bit complicated. It's not a good first issue.
Probably not. But
No.
I've also thought about like CA injector and trust manager. There are some similarities, I think. So maybe they could be merged. But I always find it, well, I'm always thinking about like these RBAC permissions that you have to give, and like we don't want trust manager by default to have permissions to list all the CRDs and edit CRDs and that kind of stuff. So how do we go about that actually? That's, I think, something I found hard to solve in the past. But maybe I can't, because for secrets we're already kind of doing this. Like we add these install parameters where we say, okay, you can actually use secret targets, but at installation you have to scope it down, so the RBAC is also scoped down. Maybe you could do the same thing for like CRDs and custom resources and build something based on that. Something generic.
That'd be nice. You take the approach that Thanos is using to build a single binary, and you just change a flag, and it does something completely different. It can be a ruler or a store gateway, or it can be a query or a query front end. I think that's really cool.
They can fix the CVs for all the different dependencies they have.
Yeah. But if they are similar, then they will probably have similar dependencies.
Yeah, I mean, I think with like server-side apply, you could probably create something that dynamically patches like a nested field. And That might work for secrets, config maps, and custom resources.
When it says in CRDs, we mean like an instance of a CRD, like a certificate, not the certificate CRD itself.
Exactly.
Right, okay, cool. Just
Yeah.
double checking.
Because CRDs is already supported by CA Injector.
Yeah.
But if you merge Trust Manager with CA Injector, it's also about CRDs. Because that's one of the use cases that CA Injector is used for, to inject into CRDs.
The problem then is that Trust Manager itself needs something like CA Injector for getting its webhook certificate set up, right? At the moment, it depends on cert-manager in the default installation for that reason.
Yeah. Well, maybe it has some kind of modes where it runs without listening for bundles, and then after it injects its own CA, it becomes bundleware. But maybe control runtime is not like mature enough for that kind of stuff, because control runtime, there is some stuff in the working to add like dynamic informants and so on. That would fit here, I think. Peter.
Yeah. Sorry, I had an idea of a solution, but I thought instead of that, it seems like maybe this is a problem we want to tackle on our own. So for context, Houssem and I have actually submitted to do a talk about trust management in Kubernetes, where we were going to look at the cluster trust bundle, I think it's the name it's gone with now, formerly trust anchor sets. And Mail did actually point me to a Slack channel where a lot of the in SIGAUTH certificates dev, where some of the people there are working on cluster trust bundles. So maybe we could reach out there and see what the scope is, because there's something coming, there's an alpha coming in 1.29, which I can't remember when that is going to be, but it's the next one, so sometime soon. But I'm going to assume they've had a similar question or thought as to what, Erik, you're bringing up here. And maybe rather than hoping that someone will fix it upstream, we can work out if they have a plan, or if we can come up with something together. Maybe that would be, or invite them to the cert-manager bi-weekly and have the same discussion in 2 weeks' time, and see where we get to. Might be an option.
Very cool. If we can make that happen, that would be very cool. But
I can only ask. I'll make an action to try and initiate some sort of joint conversation on this. Because to me as a user, I really don't want to have to pass extra volumes and extra volume amounts to things, because it's just a pain in the ass. And a lot of charts won't have it at first, and then Eric's gonna love this, but then you got to wait for the chart maintainers to add this option to the chart, or add it yourself and go through the process, and it takes time. Or maintain a fork, or run some customize before, after, during, or just switch to customize, or to another tool. All of which is a long-winded way of saying I could have just done this in the YAML, and maybe I should have just used the manifest to start with. But yes, I'll see if we can initiate something.
what about the issue asking for mutating webhook? Should we comment on that? Should we reject it right now, or should we just leave it open, or as it is?
Comment, but prefer to come and talk to us in one of our regular calls to try and convince us that it would be a good thing. Might be. There might be a viewpoint we're missing. So that might be a good thing. Which issue was that? Was that the
second one in the agenda? The one after the link after your issue, the second one there.
That one, yes. Okay, cool. Yep. I'll add an action to. Oh, hold on. I know Ash replied a long time ago.
Yeah.
I'll add an action to review if we need to add a comment to that as well. So.
But here the comment is that we are kind of forming Trust Manager, But I think it's more important to discuss this. You're making trust managers a lot more critical by introducing a mutating webhook. I think that's worth mentioning, at least, to be a fairly good point for not implementing this.
Yeah.
Which might be okay if a lot more people want to come and contribute and help build Trust Manager to be that critical component. But I guess that what we're not saying is that we don't want to make it that critical, because we don't necessarily have all the time in the world to provide all the features and all the fixes that people will inevitably destroy their clusters by doing this type of thing, is the essence. Right, okay.
There wouldn't be any harm in providing this as an opt-in, that people who wanted this could enable it, knowing the risks that they have to probably increase the number of replicas and so on and so on. It's not that difficult, but
Okay.
anything else? Any other suggestions on how we can improve the usability of Trust Manager?
I have one last point, and I think I'll just do some research. It's just a thought for now. When you guys mentioned, oh, there's all these different environment variables and different systems have different things, it might be useful to just try and have some kind of coverage of all the major, like, I guess, runtimes that need access in that store and what is their default. And then if they are settable or not, because if I'm trying to think of an ideal solution, if there was already a base image that sets all those to like a central one that's maybe even different than the Mozilla default, I don't know. It might help, but it's just something I'm curious to explore. I have no idea at this point. Yeah.
I've put a link in chat to the one that I generally use.
Cool.
Would you like me to put that as an action, Houssem? Did you want to?
Yeah. I will do this because I have to do it for the talk anyways. So yeah.
It would also be cool to do it like for other platforms, for all the languages apart from Go. Like look at all the languages and how for everything it's configured. And if we could list that, that would be super useful. I think there is probably already a list. I remember seeing something like that in the past. Could list that, and maybe one step further would be some kind of examples for each of the volume mounts, how they would look like. And then one step further would be to generate that using some kind of drop-down where you say, okay, I want to combine these kind of options. I want to mount this location. I'm using Java, or I'm using like this Python library, whatever. Generate it for me, and then it generates like, okay, you have to use this mount, basically. Copy paste this.
That'd be nice.
And then the ultimate solution would be to have like a mutation webhook that automatically detects based on the image what thing you're using. It downloads the image, it detects whether you're using Python or not, and then it injects all these things automatically.
You could ask people to annotate a resource with like Trust Manager bundle Python or something, and then based on that you do some default mounting or some default option. That's like one step further than giving people the config to do it themselves. It might not be right, but I don't know. Yeah,
it's kind of the same thing as those templates, but you only have to remember one line basically and just add a line, and then it automatically injects. It's I remember pro jobs have this. Like in pro jobs, you add like an annotation, and then the annotation maps to a certain set of parameters basically, and for example, a volume. So you add the annotation, and that maps to a volume. So the volume gets added when you add the annotation. Really cool, but yeah.
I pasted a link to an issue that I've been trying to follow up, which is kind of related here. It's the ability to be able to inject trust bonds into an existing config map. This is a feature that is available in OpenShift that our cluster admins love to use. but it can only inject the cluster root CA. So it would be extremely nice to be able to provide this feature with Trust Manager, which will kind of be, it will turn the flow here from being push-based to more pull-based. And with this in place, we could extend it with the things that you were suggesting, like adding, well, maybe get some other keys in your config map or something which is tailored to what you're asking for by using pretty simple annotations or labels.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. I mean, like having a certain kind of type to these labels that makes the augment. You know, yeah, I think I get what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as the issue is described here, it's fairly simple. It's just I have come up with some modified suggestions so you can actually name the bundle you want to inject into the config map. But that's fairly simple, so that's kind of step one. And this is an issue I probably is going to take a look at. But before I start working on something, it's probably good to hear what you think.
I'm actually just thinking that you might be able to do this with something like cubed currently. It's another thing and another step, but you could have the bundle distributed and the config map updated, and you could use cubed to copy something maybe into another config map. It sounds a bit hacky, but I don't know. You might be able to. I'm not going to commit to that, but that's possibly an option.
Is that also possible in a multi-tenant setup? Because this thing here is very easy to use, and you can actually grant completely normal users access to do this. They don't need to ask Daddy about fixing something. Because the problem we have is that with Trust Manager, you can label your namespace, but in a multi-tenant setup, you usually don't have access to put labels on namespaces. So it could actually solve many problems in the same go by doing this.
Okay. I'd have to look up what I just said actually, because I'm not sure. It might just be a more generic version of Trust Manager that just copies things around for you. So, but no, I think the idea here is definitely good. It's a good one. I think the idea behind it is good. Should we stop there on this topic? I had one more, which hopefully will only take a few minutes, and we only got about 5 minutes left. So, unless anyone had any last thoughts that they wanted to share on that topic, or
I have nothing on that topic. I'm a little. I'm conscious that Robin and Vincent Vinny have just joined and haven't said anything. I just wanted to make sure that they, as attendees, don't have anything that they wanted to raise.
I didn't have anything today. Thanks for checking.
And thank you for coming.
Likewise. So yeah, likewise for me. Yeah, having the conversations, but I don't have too much input in trust management at this time.
Fair enough. Well, thank you both for being here.
actually, that is a good reminder. Vincent, you suggested last time about cube state metrics and that exposing metrics on resources, and I tried that out and it was really good, and it looks like it did exactly what the person needed to do as well.
Oh,
so,
sweet.
Thank you for that reference. It's really cool.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so the last one, quite quickly, is so this might just be me, but for someone who's not part of the actual open source team with cert-manager and all the associated projects, I didn't know. I'm trying to look for a way that we could give a slightly better update to the community on a regular basis about what's going on, because there's a lot of stuff going on and it's very difficult to keep up with, and it's all very technical because I still don't get a lot of it, but Some of it I do, and some of it I don't. And I wondered if maybe using this meeting or some other mechanism where we could give like a 5-minute summary of the, top 3 things that have gone on in the past 2 weeks, or the hot topics, or like giving some sort of shout out to people who have made a big contribution recently, or have like a PR in progress. I'm conscious that doing this would take some effort. I didn't know if there was a GitHub way of saying, give me every issue that's been active in the last 2 weeks across this organization. And I still don't think that would be a good summary, but at least it would be a starting point for making a summary. So yeah, Erik, please go ahead. Stop me rambling.
Yeah, we're using Flux, so I'm following the project quite closely, and they have this kind of regular blog posts. And I find them very interesting, which is more the way I think it ideally should be. But it's an effort to do that, because they have people who are paid to do it. So they do a pretty good job. So I think we need a sponsor to make that good. I don't think just summarizing what's happening Git will represent at least the value I would expect as a user.
It's one thing we do internally at Venify for the team that mostly works on cert-manager is once a week we have a reminder to sort of post something on a Slack thread that was good or bad this week, and then we post that out to the wider company on the day after that when we've added some stuff. I suppose this cert-manager equivalent, like the low effort cert-manager equivalent, might be to have like an announcement section in this document for the next meeting that we add to throughout the week, and then a Slack reminder every Monday to add stuff to that. It's maybe the lowest effort thing, and then someone who's familiar with it can just sort of say it at the beginning. Maybe that's an easy way to go. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I was thinking, when we release these recordings on YouTube, like it would be nice if you could just go to like the summary section, if there's 5 minutes of the video where you just kind of get a feeling for what's going on in the project. It might be a nice way for people to get some information rather than having to necessarily watch the whole video, because finding an hour to watch a full recording can be difficult for people. Everyone's busy. Tim?
I think we have to make a YouTube short for the 5-minute section. That's interesting.
Oh God!
You're gonna have
yeah.
TikTok next.
It could be a good practice for KubeCon when we get graduated. I know every project gets a very short slot.
Actually, it just a slightly serious question, but in the graduation, is there anything about updates, announcements, sort of activity, anything around that? No.
No, as far as I'm aware.
Okay. Well, I'll have a think, because maybe we could just take some of the points, like you say, from the Venify internally thing, and you say add it to the document. But I did think it would be nice, because sometimes we come to these calls and there is nothing on the agenda. But even having 5 minutes of, giving some shout outs to what's going on would be a quite nice way.
I mean, I make it to most of these calls. I would be happy to read out any announcements that were put there and come up with some nonsense for 5 minutes if needs be to say what I've experienced. Like I'd give it a go. I'm sure everyone else in the team would be equally capable of doing the same. Like it's a good idea.
I think that should be the title of the section. Cool. Actually, a good example would be, say, you submitted for graduation. That was a big one. That would have been a good reminder. Okay, cool. I'll try it for next time. I'll stick something in the document, ready for in 2 weeks' time, and we'll get whoever's sharing or someone to run through it quickly. But I'm gonna say we'll try not to make it like an infinite list of things, like maybe 5 items at most. So
Makes sense.
cool. In that case, I'm gonna stop there unless anyone has any burning comments, and we can finish off the call and stop the recording.
I will do that. Thank you for attending, everyone. I'll stop the recording now.